Come across the freakiest story and I need to tell you about it. It's a glitch in the matrix story. And there's something about these. They're so weird. This event happened in 2014 at a water park, and there was lots of people that witnessed and was part of this event, but it really only affected a family of three. And that family of three was a mum, dad, and a young boy predicted to be the ages of 7 or 10, anywhere in between. The person that first shared this story in this event was an employee at the water park. That's why they don't know exactly how old the little boy was, and we've never really heard directly from the family. So this family of three are in a queue to go down a water slide, and this little boy is just about the right height to go down the slide by himself. So while they're in the queue, they say that the dad's going to go down, then the little boy's going to go down, and then the mum's going to go down. So the little boy is not on his own at either end of the slide, and it's just the safest way to do it. Also important to mention that there's an employee at the top of the slide and an employee at the bottom of the slide that communicate with each other when it's necessary, about when people can safely go up and down the slide, because mainly they rely on a green and red light system, which is a timer that tells you when you can go down the slide. If you've been to a water park, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So the green light's on go, the dad goes down the slide. It's on red, it flicks to green, the man at the top gives the go-ahead to the little boy. He goes down the slide, same thing happens, then it's the mum's time to go down the slide. However, when the mum goes down the slide, when she pops out the other end, she sees her husband, but she doesn't see her son. And he looks quite confused, her husband does, and says, where's our son? And she says, he went down the slide, he should be here. And the dad says, he's not here. And then they immediately start panicking. The employee at the bottom is aware of what's going on, immediately communicates with the person at the top that confirms that a little boy did in fact go down the slide. And they're trained to react very, very quickly when it comes to stuff like this. Child and water, you need to act fast. Immediately, they shut off the slide. They shut off the water flow to the slide as well and communicate with their managers. All the managers very quickly come to the slide, and because naturally a child's missing, they have to sound an alarm that lets everybody know that works for the water park that there is a child that's missing. So the park is kind of on lockdown and on alert. First initial fear was that the child was stuck in the slide. He was witnessed by his mum, the employee, and also several other riders waiting to go down the slide, going down the slide, but he never came out. And they get several employees to go down the slide very, very slowly with their torches, looking for this child because there's a fear that he's wedged somewhere in the slide. There was also quite a dark section that he could be in, and they also feared that his mum could have perhaps knocked him somewhere else, probably knocked him out, or wedged him somewhere in one of the U-bends of the slide, and that's where he's stuck. The employees are going down the slide and they can't find him. So the next fear is, okay, maybe there's a loose bit of panelling and perhaps he's small enough to kind of slip through this panelling and he's fallen out of the slide and he's somewhere outside on the floor injured in the park. During this time, as you can imagine, the mum and dad are just screaming at each other. They're going through several stages of panic and worry and grief and anger. They're blaming each other, and then they're worried that somebody's taken him. They're worried that he's drowned. They're just very, very scared, and they're just hysterically shouting and screaming his name. The manager tries to keep them calm. Only about 5-6 minutes has passed since he went down that slide. The manager then gets a call on the radio, says, I have a misplaced boy, from a security officer in his office at the other end of the park. And the manager initially doesn't react to this phone call because he knows where this employee is and it's too far away from where they are right now. So this park is huge, and where this security officer is about a 23-minute walk from where they are. And like I said, this kid has been missing for 5, 6, maybe 6, 7 minutes at this point. All of the other employees are still doing their checks, and then they get another call from the security officer saying the boy is now talking to me. His name is Tom. He's looking for his mum and dad. They're called Jane and Michael. I'm making these names up, by the way. That's when the manager says, yeah, that's the boy we're looking for. And as you can imagine, the parents sigh relief and the family is reunited. It gets weirder. So when they found this missing boy, he was at the other end of the park. And an employee found him there, crying, looking a bit disorientated. He couldn't really answer any questions. When they asked him his name, he didn't know. When they asked him his parents' names, he didn't know. That's why it took him a while to get some answers out of him. And he was also bone dry. Now, anytime they find a misplaced child and a child is with a member of like the team that work at the water park, they have to timestamp everything. They timestamped finding this child before he went down that slide. He was also bone dry. What the fuck happened? Now, they said this was kind of news of the park for weeks and weeks, and news kind of travelled around the local town. The family were just happy to be with each other and nobody really spoke to them. And everything kind of died down and quietened down around this story when the next event happened. But they said that they never forgot about it. And also the manager said, if anybody talks to the media about this, it's immediate dismissal. So what happened? If you have a glitch in the Matrix story you want to share, or any weird story you want to share, let me know. What do you think happened? Aliens? Aliens for sure.
Y'all, if I sound weird, it's because I'm sick, but we're pretending like we're not sick. We're not sick. We're not sick. I wore these last week and nobody knew what they were. They're mandarins. Like this one is full and this one is peeled. So the lady that wrote in this story says that she wants to remain anonymous because she is terrified of this family. The story starts around the pandemic time. Apparently her father-in-law had lost his job because he worked at a hotel. That hotel job did pay him very well because he was able to support his family on his own. However, when he lost his job, obviously that money was going down and very quickly. Every time they would go visit the in-laws, she felt really bad because she could tell that they were doing worse and worse. So she thought it would be easy to tell them that maybe they should go sell food at the corner of where she lives. She explains that the street where she lives in that corner was very busy, so if they opened up something there, they may be able to make a lot of money. Her father-in-law mentioned it to the mother-in-law and they both agreed, and they opened up like this little stand of Mexican snacks. They told her they were gonna do it for at least a year just so that they can have money to maintain their house, and she told them that she would help them with anything that they needed, and they asked if she could help by working at that stand with them, but they weren't going to pay her, and she agreed because obviously she wants to help her family. She says that everything was going really well, but 10 months after they opened up that stand is when she started having problems with her mother-in-law. She would start talking shit to her because she wouldn't wake up at 5 in the morning to help prepare everything for the stand. Her mother-in-law would tell her that she's lazy and that she was not a good person, that she was a bad mom. Bitch, what the fuck? She said that she would never respond. If I couldn't respond, my face would fucking tell her everything. Anyway, she says that she wouldn't respond because at the end of the day, she was the dumbass who brought them there and now had to put up with them. So she would just take in everything the mother-in-law would say because she didn't want to get into like an argument with her husband about it. So the lady that's telling the story says that the house that she's staying in with her husband and the kids actually belonged to her mom, and her mom let them stay there because again the pandemic happened, they weren't paying rent and they were able to save money, so she was doing them a favor by letting them stay there. So her mom and dad actually moved in with the dad's parents because they wanted to be there to take care of them. So again, it was her and her husband and the 2 kids living at her parents' house until her in-laws decided that they were gonna move in there as well. And remember when they told her they were just gonna be there for a year? No. They stayed there for 3 years and 8 months, and she said that she had to deal with the mother-in-law talking shit to her the entire time. They wouldn't help with anything. They wouldn't buy food, they wouldn't buy anything to drink, they wouldn't buy shampoo, they wouldn't even buy toilet paper. And by this point, they were doing really well at that stand. Like they were still making Mexican snacks, and she would see the amount of money that they were getting. Mind you, she was still not getting paid. She knew they were doing well, and they were not helping with anything. The only person that was buying everything in that household was the girl's husband, their son. So around 7 or 8 months before they actually left the house and left them alone, she said that she started to feel very sick. She didn't feel like eating anymore, and she thought it was weird because she also didn't feel like hanging out with her kids anymore, and she was never that type of mom. Like she was always involved with her children. Even though she felt sick and she felt like really off, she still went and helped with the stand for the in-laws. She would cook, she would clean, she would take care of her kids. Like, she was feeling sick and still doing all of this. And it didn't even end there, because even after doing all of this, helping the in-laws, she would then Saturday and Sunday go work for her own parents. So she was actually running on like little to no sleep as well. And obviously throughout the week, she would wake up at 5 in the morning because, again, her mother-in-law would be like, you're lazy, you do this, blah blah blah. Anytime somebody that she knew would see her, they would tell her that she's lost a lot of weight, that she looks so tired, like something was definitely wrong. Her friends would tell her that she was so social, that she was so nice, and lately when they've been seeing her, she's been very down, very negative, and it's almost like she would give them answers like a zombie, like she wouldn't even think about it. So one day, one of the neighbors actually came over and told her that she wanted to talk to her, and she explains to her that her daughter was a witch, and that when her daughter saw her, she told her that somebody was doing brujeria on her. The second she heard that, she said that she started laughing, and she tells the lady, how can you believe in things like that? Those things aren't real. She ends up telling the lady, the only person I believe in is God. And the lady insisted. She's like, come on, come with me just to go see her. And she basically said no to her. However, as the days would go by, she would feel worse and worse. She does end up telling her mom about the neighbor and what she told her, and her mom's like, maybe you do need to go, maybe just go get like a cleaning done. And she started to think, like, I don't believe in it. If I go and nothing happens, well, I lose nothing, like, so might as well go and see if something comes of it. So she ends up going to the neighbor's daughter's house, and she starts explaining everything that's been happening to her. And the lady's daughter, the witch, ends up describing the person that was doing the witchcraft to her, and she describes her mother-in-law to the T. She ends up telling her that the work that the mother-in-law did was inside of her house, and that she was gonna have to look for it and bring it back to her. She basically tells her it could be anywhere, it could be in a jar, in a box, like it's gonna be well hidden, so she needs to find it. That same day, when the in-laws left to get some stuff they needed for the stand, she ends up going all around the house looking for something, and she wasn't finding anything. After going through the entire house, the last bedroom left to look was the bedroom of her and her husband. She's going through the bedroom, and she actually sees that there's a little cut on the mattress on her side of where she sleeps. She ends up finding a Nescafe jar, and inside there was liquid, there was pictures, there was hair. So she calls the witch, and she's like, hey, I found this. Unfortunately, the witch is like, that's just half of the work, you need to find something else, there's something else that's missing. So she goes and starts looking throughout the house. Again, mind you, she had already looked. By this point, she is now moving furniture, she's moving her fridge, she's moving like the big gallons of water jug, until she started moving the stove, is where she finds something else. So behind the stove, she finds a bigger jar with a full body picture of herself and a whole bunch of nasty stuff just in there. She ends up taking these 2 jars to the witch, and the witch is like, okay, I think I can save you now. She does a cleaning, and she says that she's still not done. She asks if she could take her kids to her mom's house so that they can be there in the meantime, and she asked her to come back to her, to the witch. So she lies to the in-laws, lies to her husband, takes the kids to her mom's house, but tells them that she needs to go do a project at the school. She goes back to the witch by herself, and the witch ends up making her drink some like tea, and she said it tasted awful. The witch warned her that she was gonna have nausea and a lot of diarrhea, and obviously that shit was gross, but she just wanted to get everything done. Immediately after taking the tea, she said that her stomach started feeling like if she was giving birth, and that the witch touched her forehead, touched her stomach, and started saying some words that she just didn't understand. She then tells her she needs to go to the restroom and start pushing. Pushing what? What the fuck? She ends up pooping out a lot of nasty liquid, and when they're looking at it, there's things moving, there's worms, and there's like something else, like something bulky in there. The witch ends up telling her that that was the work that her mother-in-law did to make her pass away. Like, she wanted to kill her even after she helped them for fucking years and worked for free. The fucking audacity. The witch tells her that not only were they doing that work on her, but that the mother-in-law was also putting some stuff in her food without her finding out. See, I would have been even more pissed, because what if her kids would have eaten something or drank something that she put shit in? Because you can't tell me moms don't share their food. Like, what the fuck? The witch tells her that the mother-in-law just wanted to keep her family and basically end her life. And she was mad because obviously she did everything to help them. She put up with the mother-in-law talking shit to her. She never did anything to them. Obviously, she knew her mother-in-law was like mean to her, but she didn't think that she would take it that far. And the witch basically says, do you want to return it to her? Like, return to sender? And she said no. She just wants them to like leave her alone completely and leave her house. Couldn't be me. could not be me. They ended up doing an expulsion spell, and within a month, they did end up leaving her house. When they were taking like the last item, she says that the mother-in-law looked at her really fucking mean and that she said something under her breath, but she didn't hear what she said. She didn't go to her in-laws' house for years, and that was a big fight between her and her husband until she was tired of it and ends up telling him what happened. When she tells them, her husband ends up crying and he's like, I never knew my mom could do that. I'm never gonna ask her to see her ever again. And he apologized to her for putting up with all that. She was trying to be a good daughter-in-law and she ended up almost dead. Fucking crazy. What do you guys think?
Spooky story time. My cousin called me and she told me that this happened around March. She says that one Sunday she wakes up and she is in literally the worst mood ever. She wakes up terrible. She is pissed. She barges into her kids' rooms. She is yelling at them. She's screaming at them. She's cursing at them. Like, it is 7 a.m, mind you. She's yelling at them and she's like, why aren't y'all awake? Look at the way y'all left this house. Your room is a disaster. Get your asses up now. And her kids are looking at her like, what is going on? Now, my cousin, her name is Eva. She says that she normally doesn't act like this. And she literally told me over the phone. She's like, Jazz, my kids are older. One of them already graduated high school. She's like, I don't talk to them like this. I don't need to. If I ask them to do something, it's literally that easy. I don't yell at them. I don't cuss at them. Like, I don't ever act like that. And they were looking at me so confused and honestly kind of scared. So she tries to calm down. She makes herself a cup of coffee. She's trying to chill out. And she's like, I just felt so much like coraje, like rage. I was just so mad. I was so pissed and I didn't know why. Now, she grew up in a very religious Christian background. So she says that the first thing that came to her mind to do was read her Bible. Now, rewind a little bit. She lives in a mobile home and she says that her ceilings are not the highest. She has a chandelier in her dining area. And she says that if someone tall kind of walks underneath that area, they're going to hit their head and that chandelier is just going to be swinging and swinging. So her husband, her kids, like anyone, they know, don't go directly under this area because you're gonna hit your head. Also, I am saying the story outside with the windows down, so if you see little flutters, it's like little mosquitoes or something. But anyways, so she sits down, she grabs her Bible and she starts reading. She says that she's reading the book of Psalm, and when she is reading this specific scripture, she says that she feels heaviness, like the rage, the hate, like all of this madness kind of lift off of her. And she specifically tells me, I didn't feel possessed. Like, I was obviously me. I just felt this heavy energy just kind of like, right? And I'm not paying attention. She's like, I'm not even looking up. She's like, I'm just looking down and I'm continuously reading this scripture. And she says, she's like, I heard footsteps, like, and then something must have hit this chandelier because she hears like that loud clunk sound and the chandelier is swinging. She's like, literally immediately after that, I felt like myself, like nothing was wrong, everything was okay. I don't know how to explain it. She pretty much just wants to know what you guys think. Again, she doesn't feel like she was possessed, like, but as soon as she started reading the Bible, all of this heaviness, this anger, just kind of like lifted off of her. What do you guys think? What I think is hail to the no. I'm going to tag her in the description below. If you guys have any words of advice or if you have any idea of what you think this was, go ahead and leave a comment below because she will be reading the comments. And as always, if you guys have any stories that you'd like for me to read, please send them via DM or email because I'd love to read them. And I will see you guys in the next spooky story. Bye.
So my friend Amanda, her family owned the local funeral home, and when she got old enough, she started working there with her father and brother. Had a close family friend whose child passed away from leukemia. Their daughter was 10 years old, and that child fought so hard for her life. She did. She lost all her hair. She lost weight. Her teeth rotted out. Eventually, the chemo just took it out of her. But when I tell you that child always had a smile on her face, she was always laughing. Cancer could not break her spirit. And when she passed away, her parents didn't want any other mortuary touching her body. They wanted Amanda's family to do her services. So the little girl's parents come into the funeral home, and they pick out her dress, the flowers, flowers, and then her mom picks out a glass top casket. Her mama just wanted to see her baby the way she looked before she had cancer one more time. Amanda's father said, look, I can't make promises, and I can't guarantee that she'll look like she did before the cancer, but just know that we're going to try our best, and we have the best makeup artist on staff. We're going to handle her with care. So before they left, the mom turned around and said, will you plug this night light up in the room that she's going to be in, because she's terrified of the dark. I don't want her to feel alone. And Amanda's father agreed. Mama said she loved music, and she kept a radio in the hospital room with her and listened to country music every night. Her mama started crying and said, I can still feel her holding my hand. We held hands every day we were in the hospital. Today's the first day we didn't. So Amanda gets to work, and she cuts the radio on in the room and starts working on this child's body. And throughout the night, she keeps hearing this humming sound. Amanda said it sounded just like a child humming to the song anytime the radio was on, but when you cut it off, the humming stopped. And the radio kept changing stations on its own. It was a digital radio. Amanda would turn it back to heavy metal, it'd go back to country music. So they apply her makeup, they put on her wig, they brush it out, they put bows in all the right places, they put her dress on. This family worked tirelessly to make this child look healthy again, and when they were done, they were just blown away because she looked like she was laying there asleep. She looked good. Night before her visitation, they put her body in that glass casket, and Amanda wiped the glass top front to back. She made sure there was no condensation, no smudges, no dirt, fingerprints, nothing. That thing was spotless. So they even wore special gloves to keep this top clean. So from the outside, Amanda had to lock like 6 or 7 little locking mechanisms to make sure that all the air was sealed. Now it's locked. Nobody can get in or out of it without a special set of tools. She cuts off the lights, cuts off the radio, and she leaves. She realized she forgot to plug up that night light for her. Amanda's room was upstairs, and she thought to herself, well, I could just walk down there and plug it up, but damn, I'm so tired. I've been working 2 days straight, and it's not like she's going to notice. She's dead. So Amanda didn't go plug it up. Throughout the night, Amanda wakes up to the sound of crying, and she's like, what is that? It sounds like a cat whining or a child crying. She goes downstairs, but everything's still in place. So she gets a drink of water and goes back to bed. The next morning, Amanda and her father go downstairs where they find all the lights are cut on and the radio's on playing country music. Amanda's father said, Amanda, why didn't you cut the lights off when you left? The damn light bill's going to be sky high. Amanda said, Daddy, I did. So she unlocks the refrigeration room, and as soon as that door opens, a cold burst hits her in the face. It's freezing cold in there, way colder than it should be. Yeah, it's supposed to be cold, but it's supposed to be at a certain temp where they set it to keep the bodies from deteriorating. It's never that cold. Then she looks at the little girl's coffin, and the glass top is covered in condensation. She said, how in the world did that happen? That thing is airtight. It has rubber gaskets. It's temperature controlled. There's no reason for water to be in there or on the top. This don't make sense. So Amanda gets some paper towels and a wash rag to wipe the top of that glass casket, and as she's wiping it, that's when she sees it. There's a handprint, but the handprint on the front of the casket is right in front of this kid's shoulder, and it's the same size as a child's handprint. It looks just like this little girl reached up and put her hand up against glass and then let her hand back down. Amanda looks down at the girl's hands, and they're in the same position. So of course Amanda jumps back, like, how did that happen? So she starts looking for her tools to open that casket, and while she's searching the room, she notices that things have been moved around, like someone's been in here plundering. The desk drawer is cracked open. There are flashlights on the floor beside the casket. The little girl's nightlight is in the wall. Papers are on the floor. Things are just not the way Amanda left it. She pulls the nightlight out of the wall, and the bulb burns her hand. It's scalding hot like it's been on all night, but she didn't plug it up, so who did? Amanda starts to think, well, did somebody break in? How would they have gotten into the refrigeration room if they don't have the code? Only the family employees have the code. Amanda said, Daddy, if you're trying to play a prank on me, I don't find it funny. And Amanda's daddy said, girl, let me tell you something. I've been doing this for 40 years and I ain't never done nothing like that. And Amanda knew her daddy was not that kind of person. He would never just pull a prank in the funeral home or with these people's bodies. Amanda said, what about the handprint? So they walk over to the little girl's casket, and he said it's got to be on the outside. So he took his shirt and tried to wipe it off, but it wouldn't wipe off. The handprint was on the inside of that casket. Her daddy takes a step back and rubs his head like, I don't understand this. I've never seen nothing like this before. Amanda said, oh my God, Daddy, what if we put her in that casket alive and she tried to get out last night? Her daddy said, Amanda, there's no way. You know she was dead when she arrived here. We checked her vitals. You drained her body out. You embalmed her. I don't know what's going on, but she was not alive when she got here, Amanda. Now she's mad because she thinks one of their staff members is playing a sick prank on her. So she tells her dad, we need to call a staff meeting right now. I want to know who did this. Her daddy said, we don't need to call a staff meeting. We got cameras. Let's go roll the cameras back and see who it was. So they checked the cameras. Nobody went in that room. There was nobody there but the bodies. So the camera's pointing right at the little girl's casket. You see the nightlight laying on the counter, but around 11 p.m., the camera glitches. It goes black. When it cuts back on a minute later, the nightlight's plugged in the wall. Throughout the night, every time that camera glitches and goes black, when it cuts back on, something else has been moved, but you can't see who did it. So Amanda and her dad get to work cleaning up the glass top, removing the condensation, draining any water out of it, drying the clothes or whatever else they have to do. And while they're doing that, Amanda's thinking about what the child's mother said about her being scared of the dark. After her father left the room, Amanda leaned down and whispered to the little girl, "I'm so sorry I forgot to plug your light in last night. I hope you'll forgive me, and you're not alone. I'm here with you." She didn't know if this child could hear it. She didn't know if this was just a body laying there or she was losing her mind or what, but she just wanted this child to know that she was not alone. Amanda said that's when she realized something supernatural was going on here, something that science couldn't explain, something that she couldn't understand, but either way it happened. The day goes on, they get the casket cleaned up, they seal it back shut, and they move it down to the funeral room, and they have that little girl's funeral. Amanda did not tell her parents what happened because she said it just was not the right time, and it would have only made their grief worse. You can't walk up to grieving parents and say, "Your daughter reached out last night." You know, that would make them think that maybe she was alive or something, and they didn't want to cause that kind of drama. And from that point forward, when they left that refrigeration room, they would cut the night lights on, and they would turn that little radio on so some music could be playing. She started whispering to them that, "Hey, you're not alone." And I think that was really nice of them to do things like that, because I don't think enough people respect the dead. I think a lot of coroners and funeral home owners nowadays are very professional. Nowadays, it's they're dead. Throw them on the table, get it done, make you money. People believe that their conscience is still in their body, and maybe they can hear you. Maybe they can sense you or something.
I think an entire town could disappear in the time it takes to walk up a hill, because that's what my papa swore happened to him. This spooky scary storytime submission was sent in by Samantha, and it's an Appalachian Elder Stories, which, if you've been following this channel, is arguably one of the best subjects that we ever cover. But Samantha says that her papa was not the type of man to chase ghost stories or make things up just for attention. He was born in 1949 near Hazard, Kentucky, and he was born dirt poor on a farm with 12 brothers and sisters, and they all worked sun up to sundown in some of the deepest woods that Appalachia has to offer. For as long as Samantha can remember, her papa repeated the rules about Appalachia that we all know by now, which are, if you hear your name being called, no you didn't. If you think you saw something, look away, and don't whistle after dark. But the one that he repeated more than any other rule was, this land is old and it likes its privacy. Samantha says she never understood where those rules came from until the evening that she was sitting in the living room with Papa and his brother Hank, and they were playing a true crime documentary on the TV that mentioned Kentucky and Appalachia. And casual as mentioning the weather, Papa looked over at his brother Hank and he said, "You remember that time we saw the town that disappeared?" Uncle Hank nodded and said, "Yeah, I can't believe Mom and Dad never took us seriously." And immediately Samantha paused the TV and she was like, "What are y'all talking about?" He was like, "What do you mean an entire town disappeared?" And Papa tried to brush it off, and he was like, "Oh, it was a long time ago." But Hank was insistent that they tell her this story. He's like, "She ought to hear it. We're not going to be around forever, and it's important that she knows this in case she's ever down that way." He points toward the window and he said, "The woods is alive and it needs to be respected. Tell her." And that immediately got Samantha's attention. And Papa was like, all right, fine, I'll tell her. So he said that back in the 1960s, he was 16 years old. And one afternoon, after finishing the farm chores a little bit early, he, Hank, and their younger brother, HC, decided to take one of their dad's old pickup trucks to go exploring. Once they got past the scattered houses in the area, there was really nothing but endless woods, but they drove in the area near Buckeye Creek, taking smaller and smaller roads until the pavement disappeared and they were taking dirt roads that wound up the mountain. And they weren't looking for trouble, they were just looking for a new fishing spot. They just wanted a place of their own to hang out somewhere away from the farm. And so Papa was driving, Hank was sitting in the passenger seat, and the sun was setting. And as they're driving, they come up to what seems to be a man carrying a flickering lantern. And he's sort of walking along the edge of the road, but then he turns and he walks into the trees. And thinking that he must be a local and that he probably knew of a good fishing spot nearby, they parked the truck and followed him into the woods. Papa and Hank got out while HC stayed back in the truck. And as they entered the woods, they could clearly see an old man walking ahead of them through the trees carrying his lantern. He had white hair and a long white beard, and they called out behind him, but he didn't answer. He just kept walking. And eventually they saw him disappear down an embankment and over the crest of a small hill. And so the boys followed, and when they got to the edge of the hill, they saw an entire town at the bottom. It didn't look like a modern town. It looked like an old one with houses that belonged 75 years earlier, even back then. Several homes had lanterns that seemed to be glowing through the windows, smoke drifted up from the chimneys, and people appeared to be moving around inside the houses. They spotted the old man at the bottom of the hill, still carrying his lantern, and he walked straight into one of these houses. And the whole place just seemed untouched by modern society. And so immediately, Papa looks at Hank and he's like, "We got to go get HC and show him this place." The whole walk back to the truck, they talked about how strange this little town was, tucked into the mountains, and how out of place the houses looked with the glowing lanterns. So they got back to the truck, they got HC, and they headed back, but when they got back, there was nothing there except for flat land and what appeared to be foundations from houses that once stood there in the past. HC, being one of the youngest children in the family, was immediately suspicious of Papa and Hank and thought they were pulling a prank on him because he always got picked on as one of the youngest children in the family. But after seeing how insistent that Papa and Hank were that they had just left a town, the boys decided to search the nearby hillside but found nothing. They searched for about an hour, checking the hillside and nearby clearings, convinced that they had just walked back to the wrong spot. They found nothing, and the town had simply vanished, and now they were thoroughly spooked because the sun had set and it was completely dark outside with no other light besides the moon, and Hank finally said we should just head back. As they neared the truck, they noticed something that made their blood run cold, and they picked up the pace because on the other side of the truck, in the woods on the other side of the road, was the flicker of a lantern. When they reached the truck and started climbing inside, they heard a voice, and they looked in the woods, and standing just beyond the tree line was the old man still holding his lantern and watching them, and he said, "You folks ain't need to be in these parts." Hank said that he actually remembered grabbing Papa's arm because there was no way this man had followed them. They hadn't noticed any movement, hadn't seen the flicker of a lantern, and there was no way that he would have been able to cross the road and get over there that fast. But Papa, being a stubborn teenager, just responded, "We can walk wherever we want, old man." And according to both Hank and Papa, the man just stared at them, shook his head, and said, "You boys are going to regret not respecting the land." And then he stepped behind a large tree. Papa immediately followed him and stepped behind the tree, but the man was completely gone, and so was his lantern. There was no movement, and by then the woods had gone completely silent. The boys piled in the truck and got out of there fast, and the road home cut through miles and miles of dark forest with trees pressing against both sides of the narrow road. And that's when things got worse. Because 4 or 5 times along the dark road home, they saw the same man standing just beyond the tree line with his lantern lighting up his old weathered face. Every single time it was the same old man. And there was no possible way this man could move this quickly through the mountains at a speed that could outpace their truck. There he was, again and again and again. And Papa finally had enough, and he floored the truck. But the moment they reached pavement in a more populated area, the sightings stopped. And of course, when they got home, they told their parents and their other siblings, and nobody believed them. Dad thought they made the entire thing up and accused them of drinking, while their mother only said, "This land isn't ours and we weren't here first." Nobody really listened or believed them. But according to Papa, the strangest part came afterward, because according to him, the old man never completely went away. For years, when he was working on the family property after dark, he would occasionally catch sight of the old man standing just in the tree line, still with his lantern, just watching him. According to Papa, every time he yelled at him or tried to get closer, the man would step behind a tree or a building or a landmark and disappear completely. He'd just be gone like he was never there at all. And maybe there's an explanation. Maybe the boys got turned around in the woods, or maybe they'd imagined things. But Papa and Hank believed that what they saw was real, and they never stopped teaching the kids that the land is old and likes its privacy. And Samantha says that she has actually a few more stories from Papa. One is called The Sentinel of St. Holler, and the other is The Scritch Scratch of Blue Diamond. She said maybe she'll share those one day. Believe them or don't. But if you are ever walking around Appalachia late at night, and you see a lantern flickering where no one should be, you should probably keep walking. Samantha said it was fine if I used her real name. She'll be seeing the comments, and if you have a spooky scary story time that you think no one would believe, please send it in. We would love to hear it.
So I have a story that sounds ridiculous, but after hearing it, I don't think you'd ever make a wish for love again. I am back with another spooky story. There was this guy who had been in love with his best friend for years. They worked together, talked every day, and spent so much time together that everybody just assumed that they would wind up together anyway. Except they didn't. She only saw him as a friend. He was also too scared to tell her how he felt. One night, while wandering through a strange little shop, he found a toy that promised to grant him one wish. If I had one wish. Sorry, just one. Now, most people would have wished for money, success, a better life. Instead, he wished the girls who love him more than anyone else in this world. The next morning, his wish came true. She suddenly wanted to spend all her time with him. She couldn't stop texting him. She wanted to be around him every second of every day. Everything he'd ever dreamt about. Until it wasn't. Because her love kept growing and growing and growing. Soon she stopped sleeping, stopped caring about her friends, stopped caring about herself. If another woman talked to him, she would lose it. If he wanted time alone, she would panic. If he left the room, she would follow him. Well, what started out as affection became obsession. Then things got worse. Sometimes she'd suddenly look confused, like she'd just woken up from a nightmare. She'd ask where she was, why she was there, and what was happening to her. And then seconds later, she'd go right back to worshiping him. It was like two different people were trapped inside of the same body. And as the days passed, her behavior became more violent, more unstable, more terrifying. The guy finally realized something. Wish didn't make her love him. It had taken away her choice, her free will. Whatever was loving him now wasn't the girl that he had fallen for. And by the time he wanted to undo the wish, people were already getting hurt. Some were dying. The girl he wanted so badly was disappearing more and more each day. And the scariest part, the monster wasn't the obsessed girl. The monster was the guy who thought forcing someone to love him would make him happy. Anyway, that's not a submitted story. That is the plot to the new horror movie, Obsession. But doesn't that sound like a typical love spell story gone wrong that I would tell on my page? Let me know in the comments if you guys have seen the new movie, Obsession.
Oh my gosh, to put myself in this situation and imagine how my heart would be beating out of my chest if I was there experiencing this. Oh my gosh. Okay, so have you ever gone on a ghost tour before? So I have gone on a few and they've always been very uneventful. Well, this story comes from a woman all the way from Australia and her name is Chantal. She runs ghost tours for a living in a small country town in New South Wales. Yep. Put your feet up. So back in 2022, Chantal was running a cemetery tour in a place called Hill End. Hill End is an old gold mining town in New South Wales, and Chantal describes it as extremely haunted. So picture it, it's a full moon night, and they started their tour at a Catholic cemetery, but they weren't really getting much activity. So the decision was made to cross the road to the general cemetery instead. With Chantal that night, there were 3 other people to help run the tour. It was her mate Nathan, Nathan's son, and Nathan's friend, and a small group of 6 tourists. So as they drove through the gates of the general cemetery, Nathan already started to say that he felt very dizzy. He also said he just knew something was about to happen. And then Nathan's son said his stomach started to hurt out of nowhere. But at this point, Chantal felt completely fine. So they walked onto the grounds and they found an old crypt to use as a focal point for a voice recording session. So Chantal leans onto the crypt and that tourist group kind of formed a half circle in front of her. Then Nathan's friend stood to the right of her recording, and Nathan positioned himself to the back of the group, just keeping watch. And then out of nowhere, Chantal had this urge to just look to her left. Okay, about 20 meters away, standing between 2 tall headstones, was a dark figure just standing there watching them. She said she had to do a double take before her brain accepted what her eyes were seeing. So she quietly moves to the back of the group and tells Nathan, "We've got something over there watching us." Guys, Nathan didn't even flinch. He just goes, "Yeah, it's been here the whole time, and I'm making sure it doesn't come near us." I don't know how he kept it so casual. So he sees this thing from the moment they got in there, and he didn't say a word because he is just quietly managing it. And then Nathan's son walks up to them and says completely unprompted, "Dad, there's a dark figure over there watching us." And then Nathan's friend comes over and he says the exact same thing. So at this point, there are 4 people who have seen this thing independently and individually came up and mentioned it. And that's when Chantal made the call. There was just something really wrong about this thing. So she kind of announces, "We need to leave and we need to leave now." And then in that moment, one of the women from the tourist group, who had been very skeptical all night long, grabs her husband's arm and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm gonna pass out." And she's telling them that her head was really starting to hurt. Now, mind you, she has not seen the figure. She has no idea about that, but she is just feeling it. So they all started moving towards the gate. And then Chantal looks up and notices that this figure is following them out, continuously moving towards them. She said it felt as though it were coming towards them in a way to sort of make itself known that it was kind of pushing them out. Like, yeah, get out. Chantal says she has never left a tour that abruptly and that fast in her life. They all exited, got in their vehicles, and got the heck out of there. So as they're kind of heading out, Chantal kind of does a nervous laugh, and they're all agreeing that that thing did not feel like a standard ghost or spirit. That thing was darker, something with an awful presence about it. She says she had not gone back to that cemetery for a very long time. And then the next time that she did, she made sure to have a lot of people with her. And luckily, she never saw it again. So freaking creepy. You know, when I've gone on those ghost tours before, I always wanted something to happen. But if I put myself in that mindset and think about being there in that situation, seeing that, I would have lost my freaking mind. What are your thoughts, guys? Drop them in the comments. I'm going to tag her in this and she'll be reading them. Have you ever gone on a creepy ghost tour and actually seen something? I'm going to Salem this year in October and I really hope something pops up. Or do I? All right, drop your thoughts or submit one of your stories to me. And if you're new here, follow for more creepy story time.
Let's read a scary story. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage where creepy and cozy meet. So grab a blanket and get cozy because we're about to read a creepy story. My head was banging, my wrist hurt, and my vision was blurry. What was around me? Plastic, a small zipper, a tent. I grabbed it and pulled it down. The sun was blinding. The dewy grass felt cold on my feet. Where was I and what was going on? Hey, sounded from my left. My head twitched towards the sound. Morning, didn't mean to scare ya, the voice laughed. It was a man in his late 60s, balding with a white beard. His face seemed so familiar, but I couldn't remember who he was or what his name was. You all right? Yeah. I'm ready to leave. Let me know when you're packed up. There's some coffee left, he said, and pointed towards a pot next to the fire pit. Thank you. I poured myself a large cup, drank it down at once, and sat on the ground. Pine trees towered over the campground, while long grass and wildflowers covered the forest floor. The man had a green tent beside mine. I still couldn't put a name to his face. You need more time? Probably. All right, but we should move fast before 10 a.m. It's a long way to Mooresville. Mooresville. It zapped through my mind. I was on a hike in Pineswood going to Mooresville. I let out a deep sigh, put the cup down, and went back to my tent to pack up. All my clothes were already dirty and stale. How did this happen? As I rolled up my tent, I could feel the man's eyes on me. I quickly put it on top of my backpack and headed west towards Mooresville. The man was right behind me. In the first part of the journey, we didn't say a word. He stayed behind me, panting. You think we could slow down? I'm just trying to get to Mooresville. It's a long way. What's up with you? You've been acting strange all morning. Just tired. You were so talkative last night. Last night? Were you drunk or something? My stomach tightened. No, I don't know. I've been feeling weird all morning. What happened last night? He looked me up and down. We met at the campground. You came an hour after me, laughing, talking about Mooresville and your friends there. Shards of memory flashed before my eyes. The stars, the warmth from the fire, the man's loud laughter. Yeah, I remember, I said, rubbing my face. I'm Devin, if you forgot that too. Devin. No, I remember that. I pulled a water bottle out of my bag and shook it, but there was nothing inside it. Shit. Don't worry about it. I always bring a spare, Devin said, and pulled out a bottle from his bag. I took a sip and handed it back to him. You can keep it. I have enough to last me to Mooresville. Thank you. We kept on the road. The smell of pines and earth hung in the air. Clouds began to gather to the south, and with them came a small throbbing in my head. A mile later, there was a fork in the road. Let's go left, Devin said. The map says the road is to the right. This is a shortcut. I don't see it here. It ain't on the map. Only the locals know of it. How do you know of it then? I've hiked here before. I think we're better off sticking to the road. He pointed to the sky. You see those clouds? I ain't bringing a raincoat and I ain't planning on being wet. The shortcut's faster and there's a cabin along the way. I'm sure you could use a break, he chuckled. I opened my mouth to say something, but the sharp, throbbing pain shot through my head again. I looked up. The clouds were moving faster than before. You sure about it? As ever. We got to the shortcut. I drank more of Devin's water, hoping the migraine would go away, but the throbbing only got worse. A dark cloud passed in front of the sun, darkening the forest as my vision began to blur on the sides. We should hurry to the cabin. The storm's close. Devin picked up the pace, walking faster than before. I tried to keep up, but my legs felt unsteady beneath me. Then, in the distance, I saw the wooden house, standing in a small clearing between the trees. It looked like any other cabin, a brown wooden house with a small porch and garden, but this one seemed so familiar. Was I here before? The rain began as a drizzle, then within seconds turned into a downpour. My head was spinning now. Devin ran to the cabin and opened the door. Hurry, hurry, get in. I ran in and threw my backpack on the floor. Drops of water fell from my clothes, echoing through the room. The inside smelled damp and moldy. Devin shut the door behind him and turned on the lights. The light bulb flickered a few times before bathing the room in a dim, musty yellow light. In my fading vision, I saw a missing persons flyer on the wall. I came closer to it, trying to focus. My stomach twisted when I saw who it was. It was a photo of me. Dated a month earlier. I was wearing the same camping gear, smiling. Underneath the date, it said my last known location was Pineswood Forest. It all came back to me. The cabin, my hands bound, my vision blurring. Devin. I turned back to him, trying to speak, but my mouth wouldn't move. I wanted to relive the best day of my life again, he said and chuckled. The day you became mine. I tried to move, but my feet couldn't hold me, and my body collapsed soon after. I hope you enjoyed your water. Let me know what you thought of that dark story. And if you have any scary stories you'd like me to read, just let me know. Send me a DM.
We are back with another Trini Paranormal, Trini Scary Story, Trini Folklore for you today. And I have a story that was sent in about a Sukunya and the fact that they were able to figure out who the Sukunya was. So let's get into the story. So our follower said, my story goes back when I was a little boy around 11 years old, now 55. There was a woman in our area who was suspected of being a Sukunya. My mom would always get these marks on her legs from these sort of creature bites. So one day, which I can still remember, I don't know how my mother knew, but she did. She said in order to tell if a person was really a Sukunya, if they enter your place, you turn a kokie broom upside down and they will not be able to leave. So on this day, the woman was walking in the village and came to rest a bit by us, and my mom did it to see if it was true. To her amazement, every time the woman would try to get up to leave after saying she was going, she would stand up and have to sit back down. She attempted to leave about 10 times and couldn't. My mom got frightened and went to place the broom to lie back down. That is when the lady hightailed it out of our yard so fast. I need not mention Mom got bitten that night in 2 areas on her leg. I did not know about this remedy before. So usually people would say that if you suspect a Sukunya, you would throw rice in the front of your house, or you will throw rice by a 4-road junction. They would not be able to cross your rice because they'll have to count every grain of rice. Now, this is a very new remedy that I've heard about. And you see, you learn something new every day when people have these paranormal experiences. So let me know, have you ever heard about turning a broom upside down to see if a Sukunya is entering your house because they'll be unable to leave? Do let me know.
This is genuinely one of the scariest stories I've ever read. So our author's name is William, and this happened in Antioch, California. He was at a friend's house late one night. It was around 2 o'clock in the morning. They were drinking, having a good time, but his friend got pretty tired, so he ended up deciding to go to bed. And William was too embarrassed, or maybe just like a little bit too drunk, to ask to stay the night. So he decided he was going to go back to his car and sleep off the alcohol until he was ready to drive. This friend lived on a long stretch of road with houses on both sides, so there were plenty of other cars on the street. Even though it was a relatively busy street, it was actually pretty dark because there was only one working street light, maybe like 100 yards away. So William gets to his car and just climbs into the back seat and locks his doors. He figures he's going to sleep for about 30 minutes, then he's going to get up and drive home. So he gets comfortable and he starts to doze off. But that's when he hears it. He can hear the distinct sound of footsteps on gravel. He notices that it sounds like it's getting closer, but they stop every now and then. It's almost like someone's checking cars. He can hear the footsteps getting louder and louder until they were right outside of his car. So he panicked and pulled some old sweaters over himself just to camouflage into the back seat, and he didn't move because he didn't want anyone to know that he was back there. So William is now laying there, just praying that this man is going to move on. But he doesn't. He speaks. "I see you." His entire body locked up, and his heart was pounding so hard. Suddenly, William can feel him pressing on the trunk of the car, which meant he was circling it. And then he said it again. "I see you." And suddenly, the handle right above William's head started shaking. Then he says, "What's your name?" William did not look, but he swears that he can feel him staring right through the glass. Then after that, it was silent. He didn't move until he started hearing footsteps fading away into the distance. William stayed under those old sweaters until the first light of day. Then he jumped into the driver's seat and sped home. But he swears when he closes his eyes sometimes, he can still hear that whisper, "I see you." Thank you for listening to today's story on Explore Paranormal. As always, I'm Jason. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are in the comments about this story because it scared me. And do me a favor, if you guys made it to the end of this video, can you leave one of the little picture comments of what your reaction is to this story? Because I love looking at those things. They're so much fun. Anyways, give me a follow if you guys like stories like this because I tell them all the time. And I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.
Snacks in hand, the vibe is set, and once I start, don't eat too much because you gotta stay fine. But come on, bestie, it's yeah. Hi, bestie boo, I missed you. It's time to take a break. Go get your snack, go get your gardening essentials, come on. I uploaded a new YouTube video compilation yesterday, so if you want to watch my stories in long form while you're working out, cooking, whatever, go to my YouTube channel and watch it there. Don't watch nobody else's because they're making bank off of me. So, for the sake of the story, let's call this girl Kayla, and let's call Kayla's mom Karen. You'll find out why. So this happened when Kayla was about 13 years old, right? Now, obviously, Kayla is, and Kayla's mom, whose name is Karen, is also, but Kayla's dad is black. Growing up, Kayla always loved to be at her dad's house. She did not want to be with her mom. She didn't, no shade, that's her mom, but growing up, she realized although her mom had a kid with a black man, her mom was racist as fuck. She would say things about black people in front of Kayla, and she would expect Kayla to do the same. But, her dad is black, and she loves her dad, and she actually prefers being with her dad's side of the family. Now, after this situation, Kayla's dad ended up having custody of Kayla, but we're going to find out why. So, when Kayla was about 13 years old, her and her mom went to the store. And at the time, her mom had a new boyfriend, and he's also... Anyway, so all three of them, they went to the store, right? They get to the store, and as they're browsing around the store, in comes this gorgeous African black lady. And with Kayla's words, her body is T, face card on 10. I mean, the moment she walked in there, everybody's eyes laid on her, including Karen's boyfriend. And so Karen notices that. Mind you, Kayla is watching all of this, right? Karen notices his eyes going towards the girl, and she instantly catches an attitude. And she kind of whispers to him, "Since when do you like black bitches?" So the boyfriend was kind of like, What are you talking about? And she goes, "I saw you eyeing her." And he goes, "I wasn't eyeing her. I was looking at her. Everybody's looking at her. She's pretty." Now, he probably shouldn't have said that, because after he said that, Karen's mom caught an attitude for the entire rest of the time. But at the same time, you catch, she caught an attitude, but it's she's low-key following the girl. And Kayla's noticing this because they're going to aisles with things that they don't need, but she started to notice that every aisle that they're going to is the aisle that the girl is in. The boyfriend also peeped this, right? And he's like, "Fuck this. I'm not about to deal with this." And he walks out, leaving them both in the store. And she literally leaves Kayla behind to go chase after that man. So then Kayla had to chase after her. And while this is happening, they have to walk past the girl in order to do that. And so the girl happened to notice this is happening, but she's minding her business. She don't know what's going on, but she notices Kayla, and she says to Kayla, "Oh my God, you are so pretty." And that literally made the mom stop dead in her tracks. And she literally says to the girl, "Don't talk to my child." And Kayla's like, "Mom, she just said I was pretty." And Karen is like, "I don't give a fuck. Don't talk to my child." Looking for some kind of altercation. Now, Kayla notices this, and she takes her mom's hand and grabs her and goes outside with her. Leave all the groceries behind and everything. Because she already knows what's about to go down. She knows her mom is going to start causing trouble for no reason. The beautiful young lady is standing there very freaking confused. She's like, Like, what the hell just happened? Anyway, fast forward. They're in the parking lot. Karen is now arguing with the boyfriend. And as they're arguing, this African lady in African attire comes up to them. And she goes straight for Karen and said to Karen, do you have a problem with my daughter? The pretty, beautiful young lady then comes out and is like, Mom, it's okay. Like, it's okay. It's fine. And the mom is like, no, I've noticed. When you walked in the store, she was staring at you. And basically, she noticed the entire thing. Come to find out, Mom was already in the store. Pretty girl was in the car, but was just walking in by herself. And Mom saw the entire interaction between her and the boyfriend. And so Karen tells the lady, tell that black bitch to put some clothes on. Oh! And then proceed to mock her accent, telling her to go back to where she came from. At this point, Kayla is in tears because she's so freaking embarrassed, begging her mom to please stop. Like, let's just go home. The boyfriend at this point done left them behind. Karen is still acting tough, right? So it's a whole thing at this point. It's drama. The girl's mom ended up putting her hands on Karen because she started saying the N-word and all of that. But not only did she put her hands on Karen, she grabbed a handful of hair and walked away with it. You know where I'm going with this. Now, at the time, Kayla didn't know what happened. She didn't put the connections together until she found me on TikTok and learned about all of this stuff. Anyway, fast forward, that same night, Karen goes to sleep, wakes up at 3 a.m. screaming from her dreams. Kayla goes to her room. Mom, what's wrong? What happened? Karen is screaming, that bitch is outside. That bitch is outside. What bitch do you speak of, Mom? The lady, the mom, the African mom. Kayla looks outside. Nobody's outside. The lady's not outside. Karen is screaming, yes, she is. I saw her outside in my dream. Kayla's like, girl, you're not making any sense. Anyway, eventually they go back to sleep. Same day, Karen gets into a car accident, totals her car. Next day, the boyfriend breaks up with Karen. A week later, Karen is now sick. She's going to the doctor. Nobody's finding anything wrong with Karen, but she's sick. You can tell she's physically sick. Every week, she's getting sicker and sicker. As a coping mechanism, Karen starts drinking. About a month later, she seriously has a drinking problem. To the point where she started to actually get physical with Kayla, which prompted, the whole court thing. Because Kayla is actively telling her dad about everything that's happening. And she also told her dad about that whole thing at the store. And about a month after that, Dad files for court custody and stuff like that. And then almost a year later, Dad finally gets custody of Kayla. According to Kayla, she never recovered from that situation. When she was younger, she never put those things together. But as she got older, she started to learn more. Like I said, she found my page. She absolutely now knows that it has something to do with that mom. Till this day, unfortunately, Kayla's mom never recovered. She still has a drinking problem. She lost her house. She lost everything. Her parents disowned her. They had already kind of disowned her when she had a kid with a black guy. But when the drinking problem and everything else came in, unfortunately now, Karen is on the street somewhere as one of the crackheads. She literally lost it up there. They tried to get her help by her parents. They tried everything that they could and it just, no, nothing was working. She's still alive, yes, but she's not herself. Sometimes she goes to see her mom in the streets, and it's really sad because that's still her mom at the end of the day, but she's living a better life. She's much, much older now. She's an adult now, and so it's very unfortunate. But hey, man. Anyway, that's the story, y'all. Don't forget to let me know what you were eating. Don't forget to go to my YouTube channel and watch compilations there. Nobody else's. Don't forget to get your ebook. I mean, you don't want to end up like Karen. But, don't be like Karen either, because, faffle. You fuck around, you find out. All right. I love you. Bye.
Why did they put a corpse on trial in the year 897? Pope Formosus had been passed away for several months at this point, but Pope Stephen VI decided he wanted to put him on trial, and instead of just having a trial with no body, he dug him out of his grave and put him in his ecclesiastical robes and propped him up on a throne. He then started with his accusations, but of course, Pope Formosus was just quiet. Pope Stephen VI did appoint a deacon to speak on his behalf, but he just was hurling insults, and obviously Pope Formosus was not able to defend himself at all. Things got a little weird when there was an earthquake in the middle of this trial, and everyone else thought that this was some kind of omen for what was happening at the time, but that still didn't stop Pope Stephen VI. At the end of the trial, the Pope who had passed away was found guilty of uprising the papacy. Again, I might have said that wrong. Stephen VI declared that all of his actions as the Pope were null and void, and he was stripped from his robes and thrown into the river. Specifically, he was thrown into the Tiber River, which was a punishment kept for criminals at the time. But his body was found by local fishermen and brought back to his tomb. Stephen VI's victory did not last long, though, because within a few months he was also imprisoned, and then he lost his life while he was in prison. He reigned for a little over a year. But during that time, being the Pope was a very dangerous job because the Pope was able to crown the Holy Roman Emperor, and so people were often fighting against you. Stephen's successor, who was Romanus, he only lasted a couple of days. He lasted 2 days. And then his successor, Theodore II, lasted less than 3 weeks. So I guess this was all just hazards of the job. But what are your thoughts on this? Let me know down in the comments and follow for more weird history.
Y'all ever try to throw dirt on somebody else's name only to realize that you accidentally dug your own grave? Because a follower, she emailed me her story about a heavy curse that she tried to put on her ex. And baby, the backfire on this one, it didn't just mess up her week. It almost took her completely out, y'all. And hey, Toxins, welcome back to my page where I don't spill tea, I brew coffee. And not everything that I serve is gonna be safe. So this girl, we're gonna call her Dominique. And she's originally from New Orleans, y'all. And she grew up in an environment where people actually understood the mechanics of the foundational work of curses and spells and hexes and everything like that. Well, last year, she went through a very toxic breakup. And this man, he didn't just break her heart, y'all. He actively tried to ruin her reputation. He ran her credit cards up, and he left her completely stressed and shattered. And Dominique, she was consumed by pure anger, as she should. And she wanted him to feel the exact same suffocating anxiety that he was causing her. So she decided to do some messy work that she had absolutely no business touching without somebody experienced guiding her. Guess what she did, y'all? She got some dirt, a heavy anchor item of his, and she laid a sour binding down to completely lock up his finances and his peace of mind. But here's where everything failed. Dominique, she didn't verify who she was throwing work towards. She didn't even realize that his grandmother was an old school rooted woman who kept protection around that boy's bloodline. Shameful. So when Dominique threw all that anger outward, it didn't land where she expected it to. Dominique said the backfire didn't even start like dramatically or anything like that. She said it started quietly. She said the very next night, she woke up around 3 in the morning, suffocating, y'all. She said it didn't feel like a bad dream either. It felt like pressure directly in the center of her chest. And she couldn't even draw a full breath. And the air in her room, she said it smelled stale. It was like heavy and wrong all at the same time. And she tried brushing it off like she was having sleep paralysis or something. But over the next week, everything started falling apart. She started getting random fraud charges. Her car problems was everything, barely sleeping. And every time she closed her eyes, she kept seeing the same dark shape standing in her doorway, waiting for her to fall asleep again. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were sunken in, and she was barely functioning. She was barely getting any sleep. And eventually, she realized something. Whatever she threw out, it wasn't landing where she wanted it anymore. And somehow, she was the only one paying for it. And by week 3, she knew that she needed some help, y'all. She swallowed her pride, and she went to an older spiritual elder. She went to somebody that was trusted and a family friend back in Louisiana who actually understood what she was dealing with. She said the second that she walked through that door, the woman didn't even say hello. She took Dominique up. She looked her up and down, She shook her head and she said, you smell like old dirt. You threw something heavy and it bit you, didn't it? It took days of cleansing work, y'all. Bitter washes and rebuilding boundaries just to get Dominique to feeling normal again. And according to her, she said the elder told her something that she still remembers. She told her that the earth doesn't care about your heartbreak. And when you send a dog to bite somebody, you better make sure they don't got a bigger fence, because that dog is coming home hungry, baby. And Dominique, she survived it, but she told me she still get nervous anytime she feel that same heaviness in a room. See, look, y'all be getting on the internet thinking revenge work is cute and trendy and funny, and I be trying to warn y'all. But if you don't know who or what you are throwing dirt towards, you may accidentally bring it right back into your home. So now tell me, have you ever seen somebody play dirty only for their life to be handed back the same exact strip to them? Shit backfired. Let me know in the comments, because I'm serving it black today and I want y'all to drink from a clean source. And remember, the 2026 mindset is mind your own gates. I love y'all, and I'll see you in the next video.
When I was younger, one of my friends moved into it was a very nice house, but it seemed like it was too cheap for the place it was at. It was at a very ritzy neighborhood. And they said that the previous owners, they moved out pretty quickly, but I guess the realtor didn't give that many details. 2 weeks into them living there, my friend, he would start talking about like a man that lives upstairs that only comes out during the night. And he told me that he told his parents, and his parents just thought that it was his imagination. My friend would insist the same thing. He had the same story every single time he talked about this man. He said that he would never come downstairs, and it was only like he would only walk in the hallway outside of the bedrooms. So fast forward a little while later, I stayed the night one time, and it was the middle of the night, and what do you know? I heard footsteps right above us walking back and forth. We were sleeping in the guest room, and he woke up and he said, "Yep, that's him." And I tried to tell him, like, oh, it's probably just the house settling. You know, houses make weird noises when it's settling at night. After I got done saying that, that's when I heard a knock. And it was a knock above us. And he said, shh, he gets closer when we talk about him. And then it went silence. I didn't know what to believe, but I definitely went quiet because I was terrified. And then a couple minutes later, something happened that my friend said has never happened before. We started to hear the doorknob test, like somebody was testing it from the outside to get in. I grabbed my phone, I turned on the flashlight on it, and I went to go check, and the hallway was empty, the staircase was empty, but the footsteps above us stopped the exact time that I turned the light on. And my friend just looked over at me and he said, he only comes down when somebody opens up the wrong door. I didn't understand what his comment meant. As soon as I said that, the hallway light flickered on by itself. We were nowhere near it, and we started to hear footsteps coming down the stairs, step by step by step, getting closer and closer. My friend grabbed my arm, we tucked back into the room, and he said, don't open anything that wasn't open when you got here. And then that's when we could hear footsteps right outside of the guest room that we were sleeping in. And it was like somebody went right up to the door and they said, you opened it. We didn't sleep the rest of the night, and then the next morning came around and we told his mom what had happened, and she said, you guys were probably just overthinking it, or is it some weird dream that one of you had and shared with the other? I don't know, she completely was brushing it off. As I was leaving, I noticed something that I didn't notice before. I noticed that the attic door was slightly open and there was dust coming down from it except for one clean line in the middle, like something had been dragged through the dust.
I have a creepy video to show you. This video was taken on November 30th of 2010, and it's believed that it was taken somewhere in Mexico. Now, the setting of this video is inside of a funeral home, and it starts off completely normal. There's a man recording the environment and a man sitting down just talking to the camera. But as he's talking to the camera, we notice something else in the background. We can clearly see the figure run behind the man, but as soon as they open the door to check, there's nobody there. Because this video takes place inside of a funeral home, many people believe that this is the spirit of somebody who recently passed away, where other people wonder if this might have been something a little more malicious. This video is just insanely creepy to me, but let me know what you think.
When it comes to skinwalkers, New Mexico is number one. Then you have Arizona, and third, I would say, is Texas. Now, more specifically, the western region of Texas has a significant number of skinwalker sightings. This specific story takes place outside of Odessa, Texas, right near the New Mexico border. There was this rancher named Roy. Roy purchased this 1,000-acre ranch, and when he first moves onto the property, he said he was confronted by this Native American man. And he said this man told him that on your property are these mounds. And he said, those are burial mounds. They are sacred to my people. Whatever you do, do not disturb them. He said, use all of the land, but leave those mounds alone. So Roy said, okay, whatever, I'm not anticipating touching them even. So after a year of Roy living on this ranch, he needed to expand and he needed to grow his ranch. So he started looking into this area where the mounds were. And one day he brings his tractor out there and gets ready to kind of clear this land. Well, as he started up his tractor and started to go towards the mound, he said he started to hear what sounded almost like Native American music and chants. And he said the closer he got to these mounds, the louder it got. And then finally, he said he heard a really loud, hey. And when he looked over out behind the mounds, he said there was a Native American man standing there. And he had these glowing eyes. And he was there for a brief second, and then he just disappeared. So Roy was like, okay, this is weird, like maybe I need to get some sleep. So he goes back to his house and he lays down. Well, later that night, he awakes to just kind of like a very stillness in the air. And he said that's when he heard very clearly something say, get out of here now. And a second time he hears it, get out of here now. And a third time, get out of here now. So he jumps up out of bed and he goes all around his house. He cannot find anyone. And he has no idea where this sound is coming from. And that's when he hears it a fourth time and he goes over to his window in the bedroom. And when he looks out, he said he's seen this owl sitting up in the tree. And as he looked directly at this owl, it said, get out of here now. And then he said it flew off into the tree and up into the sky. So a couple weeks pass and he's like, you know what? I got to clear that field. Like I got to take out those mounds and expand the ranch. So he goes out there again with his tractor. And as he begins to start clearing these mounds, he said that's when he seen this pack of coyotes. And they started coming closer and closer towards him. And he noticed that their eyes were glowing. And he said they would not let him get anywhere near these mounds. And that scared him. So much so that he went back to the house and said, I will never touch those mounds again. And still to this day, those mounds sit there untouched. Realize that there are wild lions that roam the woods in America. Now, at one time, 10,000 years ago, there used to be what was called the American lion. As far as scientists know, it went extinct. But there have been many reports of people saying that they've seen a very large lion-like creature in the American forest. Now, it's interesting because the other thing that most people don't realize is there are a lot of private owners who are outside of the zoo who have large cats. And from time to time, those cats escape, or sometimes they just let them loose and they run off into the woods. So, of course, there are small populations of African lions in the American wilderness. Now, there was this park ranger. They said, they were in northern Illinois. They worked at sort of this campground. And they always had two rangers at night that would stay overnight in this cabin. Well, about 11:30 at night, they get a phone call. One of the campers in one of the cabins said that they had heard some strange sounds outside of the area. So both the rangers get in the truck and they drive over. They then knock on the cabin door and they start talking to these campers who go on to tell them that they are hearing sort of what sounded like a lion. And the rangers are like, we can reassure you there are no lions here in this area, nor anywhere in America. But he said that's when he turned around and he sees this very large cat. And he said it was not a cougar or a bobcat, like this was a legitimate African lion. And he said it ran across and went into this part of the woods. He said that's when he immediately went inside the cabin with his partner and they locked the door. They called the police who came out and actually searched the area, but they thought these people, must have been crazy or something. But he still claims to this day that he thinks there's a very large lion that lives in that area. Now, also in northern Illinois, there was a farmer who said he used to hear sort of these roars coming from the woods behind his house, and he would lose cows from time to time. And he said, it was really weird because it felt like there might have been an African lion living in the forest behind his home. So what do you think? Are there lions in America? Boys like. The Jersey Devil might be back in New Jersey. Now, over the past year, we've seen some sightings of this Jersey Devil-like creature, leading some to believe the Jersey Devil has returned to the Pine Barrens. Now, this story comes out of the Wharton State Forest. There was this man named Bo. Bo said one weekend, him and his friend decided to go camping. Now, they found this campsite that was pretty deep into the Wharton State Forest. And so the first night they're there, they said everything was normal. It was just a quiet, regular night. They go to bed, and at about 12:30, they awake to the sound of what sounds like a horse trotting around their campsite. And it just sounded like these large footsteps galloping, like it was running back and forth in front and behind of their tent. So the next morning they awake, and as they go outside their tent, they discover these very large hoof prints that at the time looked like a horse. But the weird thing about these footprints is they're leading off into one direction and then they just stop, as if whatever this was took off into the sky. So the second night, Bo and his friend, they're asleep in the tent. And once again, in the middle of the night, Bo is awakened to the sound outside of the tent. He said it sounded like the same sound they'd heard the night before. These hoofs hitting the ground. So he unzips the tent. And he gets out and he starts looking around, but he doesn't see anything. And then he hears it coming off in the direction furthest from the camp. And so he starts walking towards that sound. And he continued following whatever this sound was for a good 20 minutes. And that's when he realized he'd gone pretty deep into the woods and he was very far from the campsite. So he turns around and he heads back. As he comes out of the trees into this open area where the tent is, he sees something standing next to the tent. This thing is 7 to 8 feet tall. It has these large bat-like wings. It has these legs that look sort of like a goat and the face of a horse. And this thing is just sort of flapping its wings back and forth like it was getting ready to grab this tent. So he starts yelling for his friend who's asleep in the tent. And right as he did that, this creature turns, looks at him, takes off into the sky. He runs, he gets his friend, and they start running out of there. As they were running away, they could see the shadow of something very large flying over the top of them, going back and forth as if it was ready to come down and take them. Eventually, they make it to their vehicle and they leave with all of their camping gear still out there. And he said the weird thing about it was that they didn't hear this thing flying. They could just see the shadow of it moving back and forth as they ran away. So what do you think? Is the Jersey Devil back in New Jersey? Have you ever heard talking or laughing or weird sounds while you're in the shower? Now, believe it or not, a lot of people have had paranormal experiences while in the shower. And I think it's because you have to understand that is when we are the most vulnerable, right? We're unclothed, we are not really focused on anything, and we sort of can't see anything around us. And I think when you have an encounter in the bathroom, it's usually something negative. Now, this is a story that comes out of Chicago. There was this young girl who lived with her roommate, and she said one day she's at the house, she's taking a shower, and said all of a sudden as she's washing her hair, she sees a hand come around the curtain, and it's like moving. And she thinks this is her roommate who's just like messing around with her. So she starts slapping the hand and is like, "Stop it, get out of here, I'm trying to shower." And when she gets out of the shower and goes to see like what her roommate wanted or what she was doing, she realizes her roommate isn't even home. So she, is like, okay, that was really weird. Like maybe I don't know, was imagining it. About 2 weeks later, she once again is in the shower. And as she's taking a shower, she can see the shape of a man standing behind the shower curtain. And, she's terrified. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, what do I do in this situation? So she grabs the shower curtains and pulls them over, and there's no one there. Several other times, she would be in the shower and she would hear someone talking, or she would get the feeling that someone was touching her back, and she would look around and there was no one there. So this kept happening, and she, wondered like, why is this happening to me? And like, why doesn't my roommate ever experience this? Until one day she's going out of her house and she talks to the neighbor. And the neighbor says, there used to be a young guy who lived here, and he dated a girl that looked just like you. And it's crazy. The young guy, he was in the shower, he slipped and fell, hit his head, and passed away.
A series of spooky stories, except for Tell Me the Most Unhinged Thing Your Mother-in-Law Has Ever Said to You, Part 2. These are from my comment section. And I forgot to tag her in the last one. I will tag her. I'm so sorry. She asked me to step out of photographs at my own son's christening. My mom has mobility issues because she has rheumatoid arthritis and Parkinson's, and my mother-in-law always makes it a point to tell my daughter, "I'll always be the grandma who got down on the ground to play with you. You're about to be 6 feet under it if you don't shut your fucking mouth." My mother-in-law tried to call social services on us because my daughter was receiving treatment for full body psoriasis. Claimed that we were letting her suffer. Social services was not too happy when the hospital said that she was in active treatments. We haven't seen her since. Calling social fucking services, bitch. My mother-in-law sent me an article about how to lose weight after a C-section a week after I gave birth. We can throw hands. She told me she was going to have her lawyer file a motion that there are very strong grandparent rights and that she has contacted her attorney already. She's never met my youngest, has met my older kids maybe 5 times. I've been with her son for 12 years, has talked to my kids maybe 10 to 15 times a year. It's a power trip. It has to be. "You took my son from me." I was like, "He's your son. What are you going to do with him?" She got quiet because she didn't want to tell you that she wanted to fuck him. These bitches are weird. One of my mother-in-law showed up states away unannounced to make a year's worth of freezer meals because there's no way that you're feeding my baby boy right. Also, she flew him home for Christmas and said that I couldn't come, and he went. He was stunned that I was gone whenever he got home. Thank God you stood on business. He's a bitch, and so is she. After my husband and I had our daughter, my 3rd child and my husband's 2nd, my mother-in-law asked if I was getting my tubes tied. I said, "No, I've done enough. If anyone's getting fixed, it's my husband." She looked at me and goes, "Yeah, but what if he remarries and wants more kids one day?" There are 2 things wrong with that statement. 1, it's crazy that you are insinuating that we're going to get a divorce. And 2, he can get a fucking reversal. You stupid fucking bitch. How about father-in-law? 2 weeks after I had our stillborn son, after 9 years of infertility, and I almost joined our son due to hemorrhaging, needing an emergency D&C, told me that it's been 2 weeks, it's time to get over and move on. I'm so sorry that you had to go through that, but I also hope that you beat him with a fucking bat. I had a late miscarriage when I announced my 2nd pregnancy, literally almost 20 weeks and showing. She didn't react at all, and my husband said, "Did you hear us?" And she responded, "Yeah, well, I'm not going to get excited until I know this one survives because losing the last one is really hard on me." Oh my God. My mother-in-law asked me 6 months postpartum if I was worried that I would be too big to go back to work as a flight attendant. I said, "There are flight attendants bigger than me." And she was very shocked and said that she thought you had to be skinny. Mine said I was just the factory to make her grandchild and proceeded to treat me as such. Safe to say, I am no contact. I hope that nobody wants to take care of her when she's old and she has to go to a nursing home and nobody ever comes to visit her. When I separated from my ex, my mother-in-law wrote me a 3-page letter telling me that I was sending my kids to hell. What a dumb bitch. Ex-grandmother-in-law bought me size medium pants while 5 months pregnant and told me that if I tried real hard, I'd be able to fit into them. Imagine being a bitch when you are a sneeze away from the grave. You should be worried about getting right with Jesus, not what size of pants I'm wearing. My mother-in-law told my husband that I shouldn't care about reproductive rights because I can barely have kids anyway. I was born with a uterine anomaly that has made me infertile, and I have had 2 major surgeries and lost an ovary because of it. Rot in hell, you raggedy bitch. Told her that I was pregnant with my 3rd child. She said, I'll believe it when I see it. I miscarried my 2nd, so why would I lie? When she got confirmation, she told my husband that she wished it was her daughter who was pregnant. Oh, we're just not fighting these bitches enough. We're just not. I was like 3 weeks for my due date, and my mother-in-law texted me to ask who was going to be in the room. When I told her just my husband and I, she told me that she wanted to be in the room to help her son welcome his son to the room. I responded, too bad. I'm not letting anyone in the room besides hospital staff and my husband, and that the only visitor while in the hospital is going to be my oldest son, and she got mad. I'm not feeling this comment. You were the one in the wrong in the situation. Incorrect. I had to respond to this. By your responses, I can tell that you're the weird mother-in-law because she had responded to several other stories that were very problematic on the mother-in-law side, okay, and was in favor of the mother-in-law. If I don't want anyone in the room with my new baby, that is exactly how the fuck it's going to be, period. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And you are not going to tell me otherwise. You're not going to make me feel any type of way. You can kiss my motherfucking ass, you raggedy bitch. My baby, my body, my decisions. It is not about you. Period. And that's what a lot of these situations are. The mother-in-laws being incredibly fucking selfish because they feel entitled to their sons. They're grown men. They have left the nest. Again, it's giving incestuous. Come back for part 3.
My daughter kept talking to a boy named Thomas. The only problem is that nobody could see him but her. I never believed in ghosts. Even after moving into a 100-year-old farmhouse, I always had a logical explanation for every strange noise. At least until last winter. It started with my 6-year-old daughter, Emma. One night while I was tucking her into bed, she looked towards the corner of her room and whispered, "Good night, Thomas." I asked, "Who is Thomas?" Pointed to the corner beside her bed. "The boy who lives here." And I laughed and assumed she had an imaginary friend. But over the next few weeks, she kept mentioning him. Thomas told her stories, Thomas knew secrets, and Thomas hated when I closed her bedroom door. The last part bothered me. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to Emma talking. Her bedroom was across the hall. I figured she was sleep talking. But when I listened closer, I realized she was having a conversation. A real conversation. There were pauses between her sentences as if someone was answering her. I cracked her bedroom door open, and Emma was sitting upright in bed, facing the corner. I asked who she was talking to, and she slowly turned towards me. Her eyes were half open. And Thomas says, "You're not supposed to hear him." Then she laid back down. The next morning she remembered nothing. After that, strange things started happening. Doors would open by themselves, toys would end up in different rooms, and I would hear footsteps running through the hallways long after Emma had fallen asleep. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Then one night I woke up around 3 a.m. and I heard Emma giggling. I walked down the hallway and stepped outside her room. She was sitting up in bed. Again, she was talking to someone. "Thomas says he's lonely," she whispered. I turned on the light, but the room was completely empty. And Emma looked disappointed. "You scared him away." And the next morning I found muddy footprints on her bedroom floor. Small footprints, like a child's. They led to the wall beside her bed and stopped. A few days later, Emma came running into the kitchen crying, and I asked her what happened. She said that Thomas was upset. I asked her why, and she looked at me and said, "Because you keep pretending he's not real." And that night I had a dream. I was standing in Emma's room, and the little boy was standing in the corner. His face was hidden, and he was looking up at me and said, "Now you can see me too." I woke up instantly. Something was standing in my doorway, a child-sized silhouette. I froze, and the figure stood there for several seconds before walking down the hallway. The next morning I had convinced myself that it was just a dream, until Emma came downstairs. She sat at the table and started eating breakfast. Then she casually said, "Thomas says thank you." And I asked for what, and she smiled and said, for finally seeing him. We moved 6 months ago, and Emma hasn't talked about Thomas since. But every once in a while, when I'm up late at night, I hear footsteps running through the hallway, small footsteps like a child playing. And sometimes, just before I fall asleep, I hear a little boy's voice somewhere from inside the house tell Emma I said hi. Wow. Stories like this, like with imaginary friends, creep me out because I have a daughter who's at the age where you have imaginary friends. So I can imagine if she told me that, I would be a little creeped out. But have any of you ever had your child or somebody like a kid or that's around you that has had an imaginary friend that is a little creepy? Let me know in the comments.
Growing up, do you guys remember that movie or that game called Silent Hill? 'Cause if you grew up a Jersey girl like me, then you know that that town was right around the corner. By the way, don't mind all this, I'm a hardworking woman. But yeah, if you guys don't know the story behind that, needless to say, real quick breakdown, it is a town in Pennsylvania called Centralia where the mine underneath the town, it was a coal mine, it caught on fire and it is still burning to this day. And due to that, they had to evacuate the town. Well, I'm gonna tell you my experience between me and my sister and a couple of our friends when we went there and we decided to explore Centralia. The typical day after high school where me and my sister and our friends on a Friday night after school, we decided to take a drive out to Centralia, known as Silent Hill. Yes, there's a lot of creepy stories that you hear about that place, and one of them is from us. Yes, there truly is abandoned hotels. There really is abandoned houses. There really is abandoned places in there where weird sightings and weird experiences happen. I remember one night we decided to go there, and as we were driving through the town, it was literally just like that movie, because it was on a foggy night when that town literally like just a fog and everything. I specifically remember me saying to them, I was like, guys, I kind of want to go to the spot where you can look in the crack in the ground and you can actually see the fire and the smoke coming up from the burning coal mine. We drove around for a couple of hours trying to find that specific spot in the ground. I'm gonna be honest with you, we couldn't really find it, but we did find this spot in the middle of the road where we saw like smoke. Literally smoke just like coming up out of the ground, out of the pavement. And us being the crazy little adventurers that we were like, holy crap, let's go up to it and check that out. Oddly enough, as we come up to it, we didn't really see the smoke anymore. It kind of just disappeared, and we thought to ourselves like, all right, that's kind of weird, right? It wasn't far away from that area where we saw the smoke coming up. It wasn't far behind or on the side. There was an abandoned hotel. I turned around, I said, yo, I want to explore that abandoned hotel. Let's go check it out. And this is where it gets creepy. This hotel had no door. It was just all black, like the inside of this hotel was black. And right when we decided to walk up to the stoop of this hotel, that is when we heard something fall over inside of it. Kind of like someone had walked into a table or something. So we all kind of stop on our tracks and we start to investigate. And then right when we decided to take a step forward, we saw what was a literal smoke bomb get thrown out of that door, out of that dark opening, out into the street where we were. That is when all of us stopped and looked at each other, and as creepy as it is to sit there and say, okay, it's a smoke bomb, it was even more creepier to realize that there was somebody hiding in that hotel watching us from the inside. And by the way, that also explains the smoke that we saw coming out of the pavement. That was when we all looked at each other and we realized we were not alone. So we decided to head back to the car. As we're walking back to the car, literally talking about the situation, you literally hear someone or something behind us from that door, and you just hear them go, come back. Never jumped inside of a car so damn fast in my life. But if you guys have any stories similar to that, put them down in the comments. I would love to read them, and follow for more crazy stories in my life.
A Scottish traveller followed a ghost light across the moor, and by sunrise he should have been dead. Good evening from my little corner in bonny Scotland. The old travellers used to tell stories about strange lights that would appear on lonely roads and open moorland. Now most folk called them ghost lights. Others called them corpse candles. One old man was making his way across the Highlands late one autumn evening. There were nae hooses, nae lanterns, nae moon, nothing but darkness. Then he saw it. A pale blue light floating just in front of him. Now, it wasn't swinging back and forward like a lamp, no. It wasn't carried by anybody. It just sort of hung there, waiting. Eventually, it started drifting further away. So he followed it. He wandered across the heather, further and further from the road. And the light, it would move all of a sudden. It would stop and wait, and then it would move again. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, it just disappeared, vanished, gone. And when he eventually looked down, his blood, it began to run cold. He was standing at the very edge of a deep peat bog. Now, one more step, and he would have been completely taken by it. Now, the old man swore till the day that he died that the light never tried to lead him astray, but it did save him. Now, was this just a light? Was it a spirit? Or perhaps, maybe it was one of the fae folk playing their little tricks? Or was it something completely different entirely? I'll let you decide. Let me know in the comments below. Enjoy your evening.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. The story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. I've always had strange things happening around me. Weird things like seeing shadows move out of the corner of my vision, catching glimpses of figures crossing doorways that disappear the second I turn my head. It wasn't a ghost exactly. It always felt like something else. Something that liked to pretend, and I'm convinced it was a mimic. Or at least that's the only explanation I've ever found that comes close to describing what this thing was. Our current house isn't old at all. It was built maybe 8 years ago, but it does sit deep in the woods, far enough out that at night there are almost no outside lights except the porch and whatever moonlight makes it through the dense trees. During the daytime, it's beautiful. I love the sound of the wind rustling the leaves and the stream of endless bird calls we get, but at night, it feels isolated in the worst possible way, especially if I ever find myself alone. So when my parents went out of town for a few days, my boyfriend and brother stayed with me, so I wouldn't be by myself. At the time, I thought them being there would make me feel better, safer, because they were there, nothing bad could happen, but it didn't help at all. Because whatever was there didn't care how many people were in the house, it didn't care that we knew, it wanted to be noticed. It started in the middle of the day. My boyfriend had just left for work that morning, and I remember it clearly because he woke me up before leaving, kissed me goodbye, and I heard his car pull out of the driveway. I even checked the time before falling back to sleep. 20 minutes later, I heard his voice, clear as day, right outside my bedroom door in the hallway. He sounded like he was casually having a conversation with my brother. At first I smiled because I assumed he must have forgotten something and come back home, but I realized that that wasn't right. I distinctly remembered hearing him leave, his tires on the gravel headed out, and I didn't hear anyone coming back. And the voice outside the door now sounded weird. Close, but far off at the same time. The rhythm of his voice was close enough, but something was off. I grabbed my phone immediately and checked his location. He was 20 minutes away, exactly where he should have been, still on his drive to work. I just stared at the screen while the voice continued outside my room. It was talking, laughing softly, like he was standing right there. I slowly got out of bed and opened the bedroom door. The hallway was empty. Completely empty. My brother's door was shut, but I was convinced he must have been awake. I was confusing voices, or he was on the phone, or he had the TV on something. But when I went to check, he was sound asleep, and nothing was on. Who had I been hearing? I tried to brush it off, I really did, but throughout the day little things kept happening. Sounds downstairs when nobody moved, footsteps overhead even though there was no second floor above me, doors creaking open slightly after I'd closed them, and it started to feel like the house was constantly trying to pull my attention towards something. That night, something happened to my boyfriend. Late that evening, he went outside to grab something from his car. Our driveway slopes uphill through the trees, so at night the cars sit in almost complete darkness, except for the weak motion light near the garage. He stepped outside, and the second he did, he felt it. Something was watching him. He said every instinct in his body told him to turn around and go back inside, but instead he kept walking toward the car. As he rounded the vehicles, he saw it. Inside my car was a person, a woman, sitting silently in the passenger seat. At first, he thought maybe it was me, but he quickly realized that that was impossible, and whoever was sitting in the car was sitting stock still. She hadn't even reacted to the fact that he was noticing her, just sitting there in the dark, staring blankly ahead. Instead of looking directly at her again, he lowered his head and started praying while walking past the car. As he prayed, the figure disappeared, right into thin air. By the time he looked again, the seat was empty, but on the walk back down the driveway, the feeling came back even stronger this time. He said it felt like something was following directly behind him through the darkness. He prayed the entire way back to the house. He didn't say anything to me until a few days later. That same night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt this horrible awareness near the end of my bed, like someone was standing there watching me, and I could picture it perfectly in my head without even opening my eyes. Just the top half of a face. 2 eyes staring, waiting for me to look. And the longer I kept my eyes shut, the stronger the feeling became. Like whatever was there wanted me to see it. When I finally forced myself to open my eyes, nothing was there. But the feeling didn't go away. Then came the garage.
The subject of ghosts is pretty polarizing, isn't it? We don't really know what's going on, and if anything is going on, what is doing it. Now, in respect of this, do you believe in ghostly animals? I have heard countless encounters over the years now of people having paranormal experiences with ghostly pet dogs, cats, etc. that have passed away. Now, if you're unsure, or you are open-minded to this, the following video will really blow your mind. To give you a little bit of context, it's one of the first ghost videos I'd really ever seen. It was taken by a family member of mine, roughly around 2009, I would say. It was quite some time ago. Now, keep this in mind. He had just lost the family dog that he'd had for absolutely ages. Muttley, it was called. I always remember it. And then he was grieving quite badly. You know, it was his best friend. And following losing this dog, he started filming in the kitchen because they had a new pet rabbit that was hitting round a ball with its head in the kitchen, which is quite sweet really, isn't it? But something entirely different got picked up on the video. Watch this. Please do leave me your thoughts. I think it's incredible, and I don't know how the video didn't blow up years ago. It's insane. Watch this.
What the?
Now within that video, you can clearly see something that appears to be a dog walking forward. You see the front paw going forwards, and you see the silhouette of the snout and the ears moving past the camera, almost as if it's like a bit misty, but the camera still catches it going across the kitchen. I think it's absolutely incredible, and to me, it looks like the spirit of a dog. What did you make of this? And I think in a way, if this is true, or it's certainly true, but if it is a ghostly dog indeed caught, not a camera glitch, etc., it means our pets aren't really gone when they pass away, which I think is quite sweet, because they're part of your family, aren't they? They're more than just a pet. They become like your immediate family. They really do. So I think that's quite a nice sentiment to hold on to, but what a crazy video.
A deal with the devil. The deal was simple. We got to ask him a couple questions. He got to ask us a couple questions. A bit odd, if you ask me. Like, what could the devil possibly want to know from us? I couldn't tell you. I asked, is heaven real? And he replied, yes, and so is hell. His voice kind of sounded like dying embers in a fireplace, almost. So I followed up with, who goes to heaven? And he said, whoever God wants there. Then I told him, I'm afraid that's much too vague for us. And then his eyes perked up and he replied, what's that like? I'm sorry, what? What's it like to be afraid? And I was a bit confused, obviously, and I tried my best to explain what the feeling of fear was like. My explanation was a bit clumsy, but he seemed satisfied with it, so I asked, why did he want to know that? He said, because when God made me, he didn't give me the ability to feel fear. I can't feel lots of things. So I asked him what could he feel, and he said pain. And then decided to get us back on track here. I said, can you elaborate on your answer from before about heaven? He said, of course, heaven is open to all of God's creations, whatever they do. I breathed a sigh of relief because when I was called in, the people in charge told me that my primary objective was to secure information on how humanity could get into heaven. With that sorted, anything else that I gathered was just a bonus. So I asked, are you going to heaven too, since you were created by God? He said I could, but I won't. Why? He said, because I committed the most egregious sin. I did something only God was supposed to do. And I asked, what's that? He said, I tried to create angels. They didn't work out. My angels were created in my image, so I guess I'm to blame. All they do is cause suffering and destruction, so God said they had to go to hell to suffer for eternity. Do you mean demons? And he said, yeah, I guess I do. I couldn't go to heaven, not while my creations were suffering, so I decided when the time came, I would go to hell and suffer with them. And when I asked why, he said it was because he loved them. And at that point, I checked my watch and said, time's almost up. He said, yes, it is. So as I started to prepare to leave the facility, I told him I have to go back and debrief. They'll all be so ecstatic to hear the good news. He said, and what might that be? That no matter what we do, we're going to heaven. Then he said, but you're not, or anyone else for that matter. But you said, and then he said in a tone I would almost mistake for sadness if I didn't know any better. Yes, I know what I said, my child, but you aren't one of God's creations. You're one of mine.
Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
I have some creepy photos to show you. We're looking at 3 photos today that I came across while I was researching online. This first photo was taken inside of a childhood home that had always had weird occurrences. For example, the poster of this photo says that her sister was once dragged out of her bed in the middle of the night by her feet. She says that after her parents got a divorce, her mom kept the house and she moved her uncle in with them. And this uncle was involved with very bad people and would constantly do illegal things. They started to notice that this uncle would get more angry and aggressive with time, and they started to notice this kind of change in their house too. They would be home alone and they would hear stomping footsteps coming down the hallways, and they would hear banging on their doors even though nobody was there. And one day her mother's boyfriend happened to be home alone and he was sitting in front of the TV, but the whole time he felt super uneasy, and so he decided to start taking pictures on his phone. And he aimed one of these photos towards the hallway, specifically the hallway where they would constantly hear those loud footsteps. What he captured is absolutely terrifying, and they ended up moving away shortly after. This next photo comes from a person who frequently explores abandoned places. In this instance, they were in an abandoned school in Japan. This person was completely alone, and they make it very clear that they don't believe in spirits, but they really don't know how to explain this photo. And this final photo was taken one morning when the poster's girlfriend was headed off for work. It's a photo of something that appeared on the windshield of her car, but she has no idea how it got there. And there's something that makes it even stranger. Count the fingers.
One woman and at least 5 men in a hotel room in London in Canada. In the early hours of the morning, a young woman known only publicly as EM experienced something that left her with trauma that she would likely have to deal with for the rest of her life. The case went to trial, and by the time that it ended in 2025, it had consumed Canadian hockey and left people asking the most uncomfortable question a country can ask about the sport that it loves the most, which is, what exactly are we protecting? It was June 2018 when members of Canada's 2018 World Junior Championship team, the young men who had won gold for Canada earlier that year, gathered in London for a Hockey Canada Foundation gala and golf tournament celebrating their victory. They were celebrated, honored, treated like heroes. Hockey is huge in Canada. It's a big deal, so bringing home a win naturally left people of the public putting these men up on a pedestal. The 5 men at the center of what followed were Michael McLeod, Carter Hart, Alex Formanton, Dylan Dube, and Cal Foot. Back in 2018, they were ranging from ages 19 to 20. By the time that this case actually goes to trial, they were 27, 28 years old. All were on their way to professional careers within the NHL. They win gold. Canada loves them. The entire team attends this gala, which is meant to be like an award ceremony of sorts, but essentially it was a huge party to celebrate their big win. Everyone is on cloud 9. It's mid-June. They go out. They're ready to have a fun night. While they're out, one of the team members, Michael McLeod, starts talking to a 20-year-old woman. They're hitting it off, so he says, "Hey, why don't we go back to my hotel room?" The girl, known as EM, agrees. CCTV footage captures them leaving. They go back to his hotel room. They do it because they're both into it and they want to, and then EM gets up to go to the bathroom. She is not wearing anything. When she comes out, there are now several hockey teammates walking in the room, which naturally catches EM off guard because why and how did their room now turn into the hangout room? Come to find out, Michael McLeod had texted his teammates basically offering up EM to them, saying, if you want to do anything to her or with her, come to my room. EM feels vulnerable because, again, wearing nothing, she's now in a room with 10 to 15 strangers who she does not know. Yeah, she agreed to go there with Michael McLeod in the first place, but she's now in a situation that she never expected to be in. When EM returns home later that night, her mom can tell that something isn't right. EM has been crying, and I assume that she looks very clearly upset, to the point that her mom asks her what happened, and all EM can say at that point is, "It's all my fault, it's all my fault." So her mom, in her gut, although EM has not told her the full story, makes the decision to call authorities to say, something's happened to my daughter. She was in this hotel room with all of these guys. She's not okay. Something happened, and we need to figure out what it was. It's hard for her to talk about, but eventually EM opens up and tells authorities what happened in that room. She says what I already told you about voluntarily going there with Michael McLeod, engaging in intimate activities with him, but then she says that the rest of the team members unexpectedly showed up, and then the entire environment in that room changed. EM says that she was scared. She was also not in the right state of mind because she had previously been out that night with friends, but she says that the men then took control over the situation and forced her to do things, certain things to them and for them that she did not feel comfortable doing. But out of fear, EM felt like the only safe option was to do what they wanted. Prosecutors would later argue that the players did do what they wanted without taking the necessary steps to ensure that EM was voluntarily consenting to certain acts. Trigger warning, this is not easy to listen to. These acts included things such as spitting on her behind and essaying her in multiple ways, several of them taking turns and asking who wanted to do what next. EM also stated that the men were speaking amongst themselves, talking about golf clubs that they had in the room because they had that golf tournament the next morning, asking if they should insert them and wondering, quote, if she could take a whole one, end quote. She says that a lot of team members were in the room, but later specifically spoke about the 5 that I mentioned as the ones who actively participated in said acts and commanded her on what to do next. Also saying others were just on the bed on their phones eating food like nothing was happening. EM says that she felt scared. I feel like any person would be, and says that she's already not the kind of person that's good at standing up for herself. So when everything was happening, she was already having trouble registering what was actually happening to her. She couldn't really register, let alone say no, and then standing up and trying to leave the room. She disassociated, letting her mind go and, quote, just let my body do what it needed to do to keep me safe, end quote. She said when she did attempt to walk towards the door to leave, when she attempted to leave the room, she was, quote, directed, manipulated, and intimidated into remaining there. She also said that at times she heard the men say, quote, she's crying, don't let her leave, don't let her leave. When they were done, I guess, the men told her to leave the room because they had the golf tournament the next morning and they needed to wake up early for that. But not before she was allegedly forced into making a pair of videos, 2 videos, in which she stated that everything that happened was consensual. The videos are only seconds long, but in them you can hear a man's voice saying, everything that just happened was consensual, right? You wanted to do this, right? She says yes, and then the video cuts off. Absolutely terrifying and so disturbing, because if you are going to argue that what you did was consensual, which is what they would go on to argue, why did you take that video to begin with? That's weird behavior, because if you do something with a person that wants to do the same thing, you are not then going to pull out your phone, put their camera in front of their face and say, hey, you wanted to do this, right? Say that you wanted it, because why on earth would you need that? That in itself, in my opinion, says that you knew that what you were doing was wrong, because at the very least, you were not sure. If you felt the need to ask for confirmation, then you were not sure, and that in itself should have been your answer. And the fact that there were so many people inside of that room and not one person said, hey, this is messed up, let's stop. Not a single person. Insanity, but it gets worse. So, EM and her mom report this to authorities back in 2018, which prompts 2 investigations to be opened. A local police investigation into the group SA and one with Hockey Canada. EM's mom's boyfriend at the time had also called Hockey Canada's HR department himself to report the alleged SA that occurred. Former Hockey Canada CEO Tom Rennie, as well as the president Scott Smith, later said that they learned about what happened when they arrived back home from the gala. So, some teammates are interviewed. Alex Formanton, one who EM claimed that he took her to the bathroom specifically to do things just the 2 of them away from the group, says in his interview, just looking at his face makes me nauseous, to be honest with you. Not the point, because what he says is worse, right? So in short, he says, oh, EM was actually the one that was begging us to do things with her. We didn't want to, and she got really embarrassed and frustrated, and I think a little bit angry, because I don't know, I think that she thought that we thought that she wasn't hot enough because we didn't want to do anything with her in front of our teammates, because that's weird and that would have made us feel uncomfortable. But she was mad that we didn't think that she was hot enough. So yeah, I mean, like, we did stuff, but she was the one who kept asking for it. Michael McLeod, the guy who EM did agree to go back to the hotel room, says, yeah, this was all her idea. She was the one that told me to invite all of my teammates into the room. She said that it was a fantasy that she had or something. He also said that he texted his teammates to come to his room because he had food. That's all he says, that he texts them, hey, I ordered food. If you want to come eat, come to my room. Which is a straight up lie, because what he actually texts his roommates is, quote, who wants to be in a 3-way quick 209 Mikey. I'm not exaggerating, that's what they said. And then in early 2019, police closed the investigation, and in 2020, Hockey Canada closed their investigation. No charges, no arrests, no anything. Michael shows the videos that he had of EM saying that she did give consent, and authorities literally said, oh, so she did want this to happen. Case closed, nothing to see here. EM was devastated. She felt so defeated. I cannot imagine what she felt when the investigations were closed. This is a quote from later on, but quote, she's never really experienced not being believed like this before. She agreed to do everything asked of her by the criminal justice system. She spoke to the police whenever requested. She reviewed her evidence. She prepared her testimony. She answered every question. She spoke with intelligence and from the heart, yet it was still not enough. So then we get to 2022. EM files a statement of claim seeking $3.5 million in damages from Hockey Canada, the Canadian Hockey League, and 8 players, quote, including but not limited to members of the Canada's men's junior hockey team from the 2018 World Junior team, end quote. She files it, and then Hockey Canada quietly settles. They reach an out-of-court settlement with EM for an undisclosed amount. Mind you, this is not public knowledge yet. Everything that has happened without it being reported on in the news. The public has no knowledge of it yet. That same month, former CEO Tom Rennie hears that a Canadian news outlet would be breaking the story about the SA allegations and the quiet settlement. And that's what happens. A reporter with TCN breaks the news to the public for the first time, mentioning EM's SA allegations, the lawsuit that she filed, and the settlement. Canada's former Minister of Sport has said since then that that month was the first time that she heard about all of this, right? So she's like, well, how did Hockey Canada settle? Like, where did the money come from? So she orders an audit from Hockey Canada to find out where the funds came from. Because if they used money from their general fund, part of that money could be like registration fees, which are paid by minor hockey families across the country, meaning that parents whose children played in these hockey leagues across Canada could have, without knowledge, helped pay to make an SA case against the national team go away, which is messed up. So she orders this audit to make sure that no public funds were used in the settlement. And from there, she announces a freeze in Hockey Canada's federal funding until the investigation is completed. Turns out public funds were used in the settlement. According to Hockey Canada, they had a national equity fund that they kept in case they had to use those funds for, quote, a broad range of expenses related to safety, wellness, and equity initiatives, end quote. Hockey Canada quickly announces from there that the fund would no longer be used to settle SA claims moving forward. While all of that mess is going on, the London police then announced that they are going to be reopening their investigation to conduct an internal review of the investigation that took place back in 2018. Hockey Canada also says that they would reopen reopen their investigation, and that in the meantime, all players from that 2018 team would have to cooperate or else they could face getting banned from future Hockey Canada activities. On June 30th, Tom Rennie retires as a CEO, appoints a new CEO, but then that CEO is forced out and its entire board of directors then resigns. In July of 2023, Catherine Henderson is announced as the new Hockey Canada president and CEO. In January of 2024, news reporters report that the 5 players, the 5 that we have been talking about, are asked to turn themselves in. They are all arrested and charged with SA, not because new evidence has emerged overnight, but because since the information had been made public, there was now a lot of pressure from the public for authorities to actually do something about this. At the time of their arrest, 4 out of the 5 were active NHL players. Michael McLeod and Cal were with the New Jersey Devils, Dylan Dube was with the Calgary Flames, Carter Hart was with the Philadelphia Flyers, and Alex Formanton had been playing in Switzerland. All 5 of them took leaves from their team. All 5 of them lawyer up, and then all of their lawyers come out and put out statements claiming their innocence. We are nearly 6 years since the night that everything took place, by the way. It happened in 2018, now it's 2024. It shouldn't have, but it took 5.5 years after the crime took place for arrests to be made. The first trial, the first, took place April 22nd of 2025. The trial opened with a jury seated and ready to go. The prosecution goes through with their opening statements and then they break for lunch. They come back and then one of the jurors tells the judge that a defense attorney spoke to them out in public. Alex Formanton's attorney specifically. Jurors are not allowed to interact with attorneys whatsoever. So the jury comes back and the judge dismisses the jury. They are no longer going to be on this case and the trial was over before it really started. A second jury was seated shortly thereafter. EM testifies for 2 days, then she gets cross-examined for 7 days. So she's telling her story, everything that has happened to her, all of the awful things that she has been through. And then 4 weeks into the trial, a juror tells the judge that they feel uncomfortable because Alex Formanton's attorneys again keep looking at them and laughing at them in the courtroom. So then the second trial falls apart. The jury is dismissed and a new jury has to be found and selected. But then the defense attorney, so the attorneys defending the men, not the victims, say, hey, you know what? Let's not do this a third time. Let's not have a jury. Let's just have a trial, no jury, in which you, the judge, and the judge only decides the verdict. Their argument was that opening statements had already been heard, that the victim, EM, had already spoken, and that she shouldn't have to go through everything again. And the judge says, okay, sure, no jury. I will be the only one to decide the verdict. A lot of people have strong opinions about that because they think that the defense attorneys could have potentially allegedly wanted this the entire time, to have a trial with only the judge, no jury, allegedly. But then the third trial begins with no jury. This is now into May of 2025. The judge hears testimonies from multiple witnesses and examines surveillance footage, text messages, and competing accounts of the night of June 19th, 2018. Some of the text messages include messages from a group chat from back in 2018 with 11 teammates. This group chat was created about a week after the crime took place. A teammate by the name of Jake Beam says, quote, no boys, like we don't have to make anything up. No one did anything wrong. We just went to that room to eat. The girl came. Lie number 1, that's not true. She wanted to have with all of us. Lie number 2. No one did. Lie number 3. She gave a few guys and we got out of the room when things got too crazy. Dylan Dube, who was the captain at the time, says that he doesn't think that they're going to get in trouble for anything that they did. Michael McLeod then says, quote, we all need to say the same thing if we get interviewed. Can't have different stories or make anything up, end quote. The trial continues. Prosecutors obviously building up their case around EM's account of that night, from everything that she remembered and from everything that she had reported back in 2018. But the defense's tactic was to make her sound not credible, arguing that her recollection of events was inconsistent and unreliable. Mind you, this trial is taking place 7 years after that night. So yeah, it makes sense that no one's memories would be as fresh as it would have been should the trial have happened sooner. But the defense uses that to their advantage, breaking down anything that they could to say, look, EM said that this happened when in reality, this is what happened. And in the small details that they could prove to be inconsistent with either CCTV footage or text messages, it sucks and it's terrible, but it did make the judge question whether everything that EM was alleging was true or not. One of the most significant pieces of evidence was the surveillance camera footage showing Michael McLeod leaving that night with EM. Footage that established that yes, they left together, but footage which both sides interpreted differently. The prosecution saw a man targeting a woman. The defense saw 2 people leaving together willingly. Ultimately, on July 24th of 2025, 7 years and 5 weeks after that night in the hotel room, Maria Caroccia delivered her verdict. She read the verdict for 5 hours, and at the end of it, all 5 men were acquitted on all charges. The core of her reasoning was direct about EM's evidence. Karosha said that she did not find the complainant's testimony credible or reliable. She highlighted what she described as EM's, quote, tendency to blame others for the inconsistencies in her account. And just like that, all 5 men free to walk. If you're from Canada, I need to hear your thoughts about this. Yeah, I have no words. That's it from me today. Please let me know if you have heard about this case. Also, please let me know if you've seen any documentaries on this. I obviously was reading through a lot of news articles and watching videos on it, but I didn't look up if there's a documentary. I feel like there should be. But yeah, thank you for spending time with me today and for listening to EM's story. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.